Hello, I'm alone in Finland. This is Eve Online, and this is a video that isn't exactly to do with Eve, but it's more to do with something that I've mentioned in the past. So, I referenced Blackbelt Syndrome a couple of times in my previous videos, and I wanted to kind of explain that, both to sort of share my knowledge in the situation, and also to put in a clip if I ever happen to mention this again, because it's something that's kind of coming up way more than I expected. So, to take a long history and make it kind of short, I used to work at a place where we hired hundreds of staff several times a year. I started in the same method where you would have an assessment for several hundred people at the one time, and it would get whittled down to 150 or so. Those people would all be hired and then sent out to different places to work. It was kind of an outdoorsy place to work, and the main staff team was 18 to 24 years old. Now, one of the things about that is I got a lot of experience with people coming through. At one point we had worked out that we had seen several thousand workmates and over 100,000 children in the sort of tenure that I had there. People that were neurotypical, people with learning disabilities, people with general disablements, physical, mental, all sorts of other things. People from all sorts of backgrounds, cultures, not just within the country I was living in at the time. It was sort of worldwide. So we got a lot of experience of a lot of different people, for the people that worked there, especially the ones that worked there longer. And there was a particular thing that used to happen, and I imagine that almost everybody listening to this knows this, a person like this. So what happened was, we would get staff members in that would have this habit of, probably because of like a lack of personal experience, where they would, if you were telling a story, having a discussion, things like this in your own time, they would sort of repeat the story to show that they had the same experience. And what it was if you think about when you've got somebody in a friend group that is trying to one-up someone else, so you tell a story, say for instance you were in the military and you survived an explosion, and then all of a sudden they were in the military and they survived two of the same type of explosion. This was similar, but it wasn't the one-upping, it was just the sort of repetition, like, I've done the same thing, here is my example. And it became very well observed. And then after a few years, we mentioned this a lot of times because it would be a sort of something that questioned whether a staff member would survive long term. There was a grace period of sort of 3 months at the beginning, and this was one of the signs that people looked out for, because people with that particular trait wouldn't do well long term, because they would have some negative qualities that we weren't looking for. So this was something that was sort of talked about and mentioned, and a lot of people would recognise it when it was happening. But then this particular guy came in after a few years, and he got it named after him in sort of colloquialism. And the reason being is, it started quite innocently at the beginning, where he would do this, and remember, he's not trying to one-up a conversation, he's not trying to put himself as better, he's just trying to show that he's the same. Your man was 18 years old when he started, and just 18, just over the threshold of being able to be hired. And somebody was talking about something at one point, and it was martial arts, it was karate. And the lad, after the person had finished talking, had finished their story, Black Belt jumped in there. And this is how he earned his name in the beginning, and he started talking about his experience with karate. Now, he could have had that experience, because obviously it's something you could do for a young age, but as he was talking about it, things weren't adding up. There was clear evidence that he didn't have the knowledge of the subject he was talking about, even to people that didn't know what he was talking about, and that his knowledge had sort of come from films and things like this. And this came out in a few times in a few different stories over the next couple of months, where it became a bit of a laugh. And essentially there was almost bullying that was going on, although your lads didn't really have the mental capability to perceive that he was being mocked. So the people around about him would try and tease the story out of him and get more, and sort of lead him into saying things and stuff like this. And it was a bit sort of sad in general to see. However, the lad in question didn't sort of know what was going on. Obviously, there was some form of difference there that he didn't quite perceive what was around about him, and we don't know, or at least I don't know what that was to this day. Now, after a couple of months, we get somebody in who was a former soldier in the British military. I'm not going to say what branch, and I'm not going to say what he did, but he was highly qualified and had served his time in multiple dangerous places that most people have probably read about. And he was telling a little story one day about something that had happened. It was a bit of a joke. It wasn't anything serious or things like this. And then very quickly, Blackbelt came out with roughly the same story. Oh yes, I also did this because I wasn't in the group that you were talking about. I was in this other group. And he immediately named the SAS. Now, that's obviously the most well-known branch of Special Forces in the world, probably, because some of their stuff has been on TV, if you know anything about the Iranian embassy siege. And they're well regarded as high-quality soldiers and psychopathic in several regards. But they also have very specific requirements, and one of the requirements is that you have to have served for quite a significant amount of years, and you can't apply to the SAS, they recruit, sort of thing. So immediately this 18-year-old talking about this, now in Britain you can join the army at 16, you could be deployed at 17 and a half, I do believe. I'm not entirely sure on that. So the army at 16, that he would be out by now, never mind being a Special Forces soldier, which again, his persona was not exactly of a capable person in any regard, so you knew immediately this was nonsense. And this became a bit of a laugh. But again, sort of innocent, he wasn't harming anybody. It is actually a crime, ironically, because it's considered fallen valour. Even in Britain, if you're claiming to be a soldier and you weren't, then you're in legal trouble. I also believe that the US has this in some way, but again, don't quote me on this. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know exactly about it. I just know you don't do it, because if you ain't it, you don't do it. A little while after this, a very innocent thing happened where we were in the kitchen and somebody got a new set of chef's knives, really nice quality Japanese knives. They were just making something for themselves. They weren't a chef, but we had a couple of former chefs amongst the staff team, and they were sort of showing them off. Typical thing. There's a few people there were all sort of like men, women, a few different ages there were chatting about it. And Blackbelt comes into the room, and immediately he has been a chef as well. And one of the lads kind of led him into this, and he said, "Oh, you know what you're doing with knives then? You know how to test if they're sharp, like when you run them across your finger." Which was the worst possible thing to say, because this lad, instead of taking a blade side on and sort of running it over his finger to feel if it had sharpness, he took it from the heel of the blade and ran it down his finger to the tip of the blade, slicing into the bone, hitting something fairly important, and blood going everywhere, which immediately caused the lad to pass out and slam into the tile floor, hard enough that we all heard the crunch, not just head hitting floor, something broke inside. So there was an ambulance, hospital trip and all of this jazz, and several members of staff that had been in the room got a warning off of the boss about teasing him, understandably so. However, because people got warnings about teasing them, they stopped interacting with them, just in general, because sometimes you couldn't help yourself. And mob mentality sort of kicks in. And then what happened was, a few months after this, the lad came into some money, and he bought a whole load of climbing equipment. A lot of us did climbing at the time, and he went out with some brand new staff members that were a couple of weeks into their job themselves. Bear in mind, he's sort of 7 or 8 months at the time, and he went out. He decided to take them climbing to the area that people had taken him. He had no real expertise in it. He had not really done it off site. He didn't know what he was doing, but he had all the gear and no idea. And he went and he set up his anchor, and he was belaying somebody up the wall, and his anchor completely came loose. And this person dropped from a height of about 8 meters, which I think is around about 30 feet if you're imperialish. There was some severe injuries. The person was okay in the end, but it was bad. And for our particular place, we had somebody do that almost exact same thing, all the gear and no idea with Realm to Climbing, maybe a year or so previous, maybe 2. That person, when they had their accident, they can no longer walk because of what happened. And the only saving grace of that particular accident was it was the person who had bought the gear, taken people climbing, and they were then climbing the wall. It was their own anchor they had placed that came out. And when they dropped onto the ground, they broke their spine in multiple places. But it was their responsibility. And it was a big issue at the work at the time. And obviously when we found out this second thing happened, it was no laughing matter, because somebody could have died. And this is why I have a bit of a tweak about that particular personality trait in general. But it's also why it flags up to me immediately when you've got somebody that goes, oh, I do this, and it's a very rare or niche thing, and immediately you've got 20 people going, yes, I also do this, and you're going, it's unlikely. For instance, when we're talking about the amount of ISK, we had the guy on one of the first videos I made that was going, oh, you can make billions in 50 days, 80 billion, he said, in 50 days, which is obviously more than the average player has across all of their accounts if they have multiple accounts. Eve has studied this, CCP has studied this specifically and put out all the figures and when they're doing their big talks. So for somebody to come out and say, this is what I've done, I usually, personally, ask for proof. There are various sites where you can link your API and you can sort of show your income and things like this, because as we've said before, it is absolutely possible to go out and buy a whole load of ISK and become the richest person in Eve in no time at all. But conversely for that, it's also quite a bad thing in general, because there's a lot of people that go out and make these claims, and they're claims without any proof. I don't particularly talk about sort of money in general for my own wealth, because I don't think that is important. Somebody made a comment earlier on within the past couple of days that I saw, where they had said about, oh, I'm sorry, I do occasionally buy Plex, and I was like, no, you don't need to apologise. That it's a game mechanic, it's perfectly fine, and it can be fun. If you want to go out there and you want to purchase a Plex, say for instance for Christmas, the example I gave, which I think is really funny, is if you go out, you don't have much time before Christmas, but you want to have a laugh on your holiday on Eve, and you buy one of the 500 Plexis, you could fit up 80 odd Navy slicers for faction warfare, and you could go and have a laugh and just lose ships and lose ships and lose ships. And the amount of money for a new player that could generate that it takes so much time that it makes more sense to spend sort of an hour or two at work to generate the income and buy the Plex, as opposed to 20 hours grinding with sort of lower skill abilities to be able to get the same thing. So I completely agree with that. I can see that as economical. And the reason that I speak against the Plex mentality is not that, and it's not buying Plex. It's because some people come into the game seeing all of the shininess that is being put out there, and they immediately go and try and buy the blingiest fit, but they have no idea of the game yet, so they're going to lose it. It doesn't even matter if they take it to low sec. If you're rocking a fit that somebody scans and they can see how shiny all your modules are, they might try and take it from you. Ganking is a thing, and it's something that doesn't come up a lot when people are talking about the game to newbies, that this is a reality that can happen. And nowadays, especially around about sort of Caldari space, there are a lot of gankers that are happy to do this. Obviously these gankers used to be everywhere in the heyday of code that sort of dropped off a few years back, but in general, when I'm sort of being derisive of Plex, that's why I don't like people putting out this sort of isolated opinion of, look at how shiny this is, look at how good this is, because there are a lot of us that are sort of magpie brained and go, oh, that's shiny, I really want that, I would really like to have that, and then that becomes the focus. And some people that have the ability might go and spend real world cash to get that shiny thing, especially if they're a newer player that hasn't sort of worked out the ins and outs of the game yet. And the second that's lost, the rage quit is over 50% likely. So that's where my sort of opinion goes. It's trying to get somebody to to learn the game a little bit more before they go and buy the shininess. Obviously, everybody's shiny. You saw in previous video, I got trained into some new ships and went, oh, shiny. And I was genuinely happy for doing that. But that's why I sort of wanted to explain that, why that personality trait is a sort of tweak for me, and why I notice it a lot more than most people would. If you look through Reddit, look through the comments, if anybody sort of says about something shiny they have, look through the comments and you will see so many people going, oh, I have this amazing thing. There was a funny one a few years back where somebody was talking about, I can't remember which one it was it the Navy or the Imperial? I think it was the Impoc. One of the rarer ships that was given out as a reward. And there was a funny Reddit post where people had posted about the ships that they had. Might not have been the Impoc, it might have been something else. But there was somebody had gone out there and said, oh, this is it, look at this is the shininess I've got. And a few people had stacked up underneath it going, I've got one. And the amount of comments saying I've got one were more than the amount of ships in game. And that somebody had flagged that up, and it was a really funny video that I saw at one point going, look at this is odd, because obviously there isn't that many ships. There was only 10 given out, and so this is why I'm kind of distrusting and I ask for proof and things like this. But I also think that is part of the problem. It's like this secondary effect of when somebody goes out and flexes and goes, look at all the shininess I've got, which is fair to do. But then you've got so many other people going, oh, well, I've got this as well, and I've got this, and I've got this. And then you've got a new person coming in going, oh, well, that's the standard. It's the absolute standard to have billions, to have hundreds of billions. People are making 80 billion per week. Somebody said about 80 billion per day, 40 billion, 400 billion. They're talking about these figures when, in actual fact, the average player, so the majority of the player base that is active has less than 10 billion. And that's from CCP themselves going through and counting up all of the players, linking all of the people that play on the same IP with the same email addresses, grouping them all together and going, right, this is how much money the average players have. And their figure was like, I think it was 9.8 billion. I've linked it before. But this is why I jump on those kind of comments. I not jump on them. I don't want to be sort of aggressive or nasty and things like that. And I don't think that you should comment. I don't think you should engage with people that are doing that in general. I kind of ask for proof, because some people out there might actually do it. And I would like to see, just in general, how somebody's doing it, because there are various different ways, and it's always good to see an income stream and things like that. All education is good, all commentary is good. So I'd like to see things like that, which is why I engage, but I don't think you should be negative and go out there and immediately sort of dismiss them, because that comment, as I sort of relating it to Blackbelt Syndrome, I was about to say the guy's name there because his name was part of the thing as well, but we tried to stop using that. But the reason that this became sort of linked with it was because if you just didn't engage, then it would kind of go away on its own. It needed to be fed. It needed to be something that was given oxygen to grow. So if people that sort of make these comments, if you sort of leave them be, then it's less common. And hopefully it'll sort of clear itself up. Obviously, we have had an interesting time of the past few years, and a lot of people have become essentially more sort of isolated and things like this. Online communities especially, people are more isolated in the real life, and they seek solace in conversation and things like that online. So it's more common that that particular trait will show up, and it's in an innocent form in general. And it's never done in a bad way. It's never done to try and or most of the time it's not done to try and sort of scam people or anything like that. It's just a general, oh, this is what I do, but it's not reality. And for the person that keeps requesting it, yes, it's disconnected from reality. I know I got stuck with that word, but I would I just wanted to sort of mention that as to why, and sort of be able to link this video if people are asking in the future if this particular topic comes up, because it's something that in the real world I have seen how bad it can sort of go. For Eve itself, I don't think it's as big a problem. Obviously, there's no physical risk in it, but I do think this is harming the community in general, because new players that come in, their expectations are in the hundreds of billions. I was watching a video the other day with I think I mentioned this in a different video, but there was a guy running, he was on Twitch and he was running abyssal sites one after the other, and he lost I've forgotten what it was. He lost a T2 what's the name of it? This is the name of it. So the uture. He lost one of these that was faction fit up the wazoo when he was running T6s, and the actual value that he lost was 4.8 billion in the one hit. So this ship was fitted up for 4.8 billion. He also had a head full of implants that were worth billions on top of that. And that was nothing for your man, because his other ships, he immediately jumped into another cruiser that was worth the same. It was the opposite faction to this, the Edencom. This one, the Stormbringer, was the ship that he jumped into after that, and this ship was also worth I think it was worth like 3.9 billion, and the new clone had billions of implants. So in those two ships alone, the one that was lost and one that was there, he had more ISK than the majority of players that play the game. But it was also a good thing that he lost the ships, and he was talking about not being a good pilot and just in general how long he'd been playing. So it was a good video to see, because you had that context there, but at the same time it's also something that people might see and go, oh, I want that. And if you haven't seen the loss, you haven't seen how much it cost and how badly it can go, then you might not be ready for it when it happens. And if you've put all your money into it, I think almost everybody that plays Eve has done it at one point where they flew something they couldn't afford to lose and they lost it. I know I have on more than one occasion. It's the way of the game. Occasionally you take stupid risks, or you're just tired and don't think about something. But that's what I sort of want to prepare people for, because if you are prepared for that, when the loss does happen, it's not as big a hit. And I'm sort of trying to help that if possible with these videos. So that's what I wanted to explain, sort of why I referenced this, why I think it's important. And apologies, this isn't too heavily sort of Eve related, but I got the question and I sort of try and answer these when I get them. So thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. Likes, comments, things like this down below. I don't really mind likes. It's nice to see though. But comments are something that I really do like. I like the engagement. Also, just in general, if you have ways that you are interested about, if you have questions about different methods and things like this, something that you think is unusual, please put it down in the comments, because I'm sort of returning to this. I want to learn everything about this, and I would like to see other people's perspective, because I've been playing now, it turns out I've been playing for 19 years, but I still don't know all of the game, and the game has changed in multiple different ways since I've come back. Obviously there's been some points that I've put out that have been incorrect because of the sort of time that has gone past, and modules doing different things and things like that, and also because of different sort of methodologies and things like that. So I would like to hear sort of lots of suggestions and things like that. If you have the time to leave a comment, it'd be very nice. And if you yourself are doing this in general, somehow I would like to get a poll going, but I don't quite know how to do this, because I'm very curious about people's main method of play, whether you are playing to make ISK, whether you are playing to get to a certain ship, whether you're just sort of exploring for the sake of the actual sightseeing, or you run missions. I'm very curious about how other people play Eve, because for me personally it's very random. I hop in and I see what I could be doing that day. At the moment I'm just randomly moving some stuff about because why not, but at the same time Sometimes I come on with a specific purpose. Sometimes it's just a case of hop on, see what's going on, and not actually doing anything, chatting to some people in local and then hopping off after however long. So just in general, I'm very curious about that. So if you've got the time, it'd be much appreciated to hear your opinions, your time, how you spend your time and things like that, how you perceive the game. Do you want to play it for risk? Do you want to play it for fun? And so your motivations. But yeah, thanks for watching. Have a good time. Fly safe if that's what you choose to do. And if you don't, please video it. I'm very curious. I like funny explosions because, oh my god, I've lost some bad ones. I need to try and get some other bad ones that look similar to what I lost and didn't film. So, bye!